We just finished with a panel called the Minority Report, and it was directed at looking at different aspects of the way that race is policed, looking at it through the policing of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities in the criminal justice system, looking at the way in which child protection laws police and remove children from Aboriginal families, the way that systemic and institutional racism takes place through street policing, particularly African Australian communities, and looking at the policing of women's bodies.
My contribution was to talk a little bit about justice reinvestment and also about the Australian Law Reform Commission inquiry into Indigenous incarceration that was chaired by Judge Matthew Myers and reported to government last December. In that report it covered off on all the contemporary issues relating to Indigenous incarceration. The reality is that there are so many reports that have been done about Indigenous incarceration, from the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Islander deaths in custody to our most recent report, and Senate inquiries and so forth. But the problem is that they're not being, the recommendations aren't being enacted. And so what we called for in the inquiry was to establish a body that's going to be an authority who can actually look at justice reinvestment, to be able to support trials on justice reinvestment as they exist, but also to be the body that holds government to account and ensure that we have cross-portfolio support for justice reinvestment initiatives, because they do impact on employment, education, health, etc. And we've got to get them all right if we want to keep people out of prison.
It has been my privilege to actually be on a panel with such incredible people talking about and so passionate about justice for Aboriginal communities, for people of colour, for minority groups and for women. My focus on the panel was actually on stopping the policing of women's bodies, whether it's about what they wear, their reproductive health choices, or whatever other decisions that make about themselves or their bodies.
For me personally, I'm really passionate about out-of-home care and juvenile justice. However, among the root of all that, it comes down to liberating as First Nations people and who we are and where we come from. So I guess when I talk about what type of justice am I passionate about, I'm passionate about going back to that root of everything, which is liberating with my people, my First Nations people, and standing strong together in order to create justice in those areas such as out-of-home care, juvenile justice, and other minority groups who are faced with the same inequities.
The other key issue that I talked about was racism and systemic racism, and particularly with the focus on unconscious bias, because that's what does impact on all of us. We all have our own biases that we've developed over a lifetime, and it's how those biases impact on our behaviours and the way that we go about doing our business. So it's important that we reflect on it, and it's also important that the community legal centres think about, as we've encouraged the police to do, is to think about getting a reconciliation action plan, or RAP, as that's a discipline within an organisation to help focus on Indigenous issues, but it also has an impact on minority groups.
Part of the purpose of having this panel is really to create a provocation and to provoke ideas of how community legal centres might think about their work as work that is towards a racially just future. And the idea was that if we reframe our work as racial justice work, different questions emerge. Questions such as, who should we consult with and talk with in developing our priorities as an organisation? What kinds of markers will we use to decide whether we're succeeding as an organisation? And even though these aspects seem quite small, they can actually radically transform the work that we do beyond service provision and towards aligning ourselves with bigger movements across many areas of community work towards a more racially just future.
I would like to thank the CLCs for organising this event, and also for the incredible work they do in supporting communities that are discriminated against and that are disadvantaged. I think what we got from today was that people need to listen from the front line, from those that are actually disadvantaged and discriminated against, and that those voices are amplified in the work of the CLCs and within the broader community and within politics as well.